one of the hot topics at the moment is, the generative AI and
Yes.
ChatGTP and its ability to be creative either with language or increasingly, you're starting to see situations where it looks like it might be able to be creative visually as well.
Yeah, it can be. It's scary. And I love the fact that you brought this up because I'm of the camp that we have to embrace it. It's here to stay. There are tutorials on TikTok on how you can generate the content in AI and then have it pipe right into Canva and generate graphics right into, your social media feeds, like without any human touch and all this other. And so, I've got staff. My business is set up with full-time employees, and they're looking at each other like, are we going to go the way of the gas pump attendant? It's kind of like, are we being replaced? And the truth is that we need to embrace it as a tool. Very much like the reason why we don't have computers or AI deciding court cases, we have human judges, is because I think there'll always be some gray in anything we do. There are things that AI can do, but it's not always so black and white. And so we should use it as a tool. I'm okay with my copywriters using it as a tool to generate ideas, but then I want you to comb through those ideas and maybe combine a few into what's going to work best for our client.
You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the E-Marketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
Super excited to be chatting today with Ramon Peralta, who runs Peralta Design. And a lot of his focus is on building brands and launching brands. So, Ramon, I wanted you to start off, just talk about the way you handle brand relaunch versus complete empty whiteboard, where you get to start a brand from scratch.
Yes, it's a great question. The brand relaunches are typically what I would call a brand evolution. Where that particular company and their brand may have a following already, they may have a loyal customer base. And so the changes we make to their brand have to have some breadcrumb trails to their old mark. We don't want to lose anybody, but we want to kind of show that it's been refreshed. You see that Stop and Shop recently you typically will keep the same color palette if you change the font and the iconography, or if you kept the fonts and iconography, then you could change the color palette. But when you change it all, that's more of a rebrand versus a refresh or a brand evolution. And when we're doing a blank slate, that's a lot. There's a lot more flexibility there, because typically we'll go in 3 to 5 different directions initially. And I'm speaking primarily on brand identity, obviously, in this conversation. But we'll go 3 to 5 different ways. And we'll present concepts in black and white, because color can be distracting. And then once we select a direction, we start refining it, and then we may introduce color a little bit further down the road.
So I know that every year they release like the colors of the year, like which Pantone is like the color of the year. Do you allow yourself to be influenced by like which colors are sort of vogue or which colors are hot right now?
I don't get hung up on that. I look at it and see, but it really comes down to the psychology of the color. Of course, being in the industry, you want to be aware of what those are, but the psychology is more important. And it goes back to, who is this business for? Who is this product for? And what kind of feelings do we want to evoke from them? And the kind of examples of color psychology at work, you'll typically see banks or financial institutions use greens or blues, or even police uniforms are blue. Blue is a color that's soothing, it's calming, it evokes trust. Whereas restaurants, for example, we rebranded a catering business. Their colors were browns and kind of yellow ochres, and so they'll use, or even greens if it's a healthy place. They'll typically pull colors right out of the food color palette, and those colors obviously make you hungry. There is a true psychology to them. Another like cliche example is like a daycare. They may use primary colors, right? So just some examples, candy stores or baby clothing stores may use pinks or soft blues. There really is a true psychology. There are entire books written on the psychology of color. And that to me is a better strategy than going with what's in vogue in a particular season.
In situations where there's a merger of I wouldn't say necessarily equals, because usually when there's a merger, there's sort of a dominant brand in the merger, and
Yes.
sort of secondary brand in the merger.
Yes.
In the cases where there's going to be a merger and that's going to be used as a catalyst for rebranding, do you have unique considerations that you take into account at that point?
Yes, I do, and I witnessed being in the Northeast what I would call a master class in that in merger and acquisition, where recently M&T Bank purchased or bought out People's United Bank, and the way they handled that was a textbook like master class on a rebrand in M&A. And what they did, well, their colors were green, People's Bank was blue. They started out with billboards that were very familiar to People's Bank, but they split the billboard in half. So one half was blue and one was green. And they did that with the direct mail pieces too. You would get collateral that was green on one side, blue on another. Then about a couple of months down the line, and when it's done well, you can't even tell what the timing sequence is. But eventually they started sending their green collateral pieces and the blue was replaced with black and white. So they desaturated the color, and eventually what you saw was all green branding with a black and white People's logo. And it's just kind of like the grip is getting looser and looser, and then it finally like, okay, we've crossed the street. Okay, now I can let you go. And because if you do those kind of moves too abruptly, their whole goal, of course, is minimize attrition. They don't want to lose People's Bank to that transfer of power, if you will. And so it's got to be done so gradually that it never gets alarming, that you never lose trust, that you're never feeling like, who are these guys? And so that's how you want to do any type of M&A rebrand. Is there's going to be a dominant brand in most cases, and you want to do it gradually. Another great one that's in my book is when FedEx Office purchased Kinko's. That's another classic textbook. When they first acquired them, it stopped being Kinko's, it was FedEx Kinko's. And they got rid of the quirky Kinko's like typography. And then before you know it, it was FedEx Office. But it didn't become FedEx Office immediately, or else they would have lost all their Kinko's customers. Right.
Is there a timeline, or is there more of a catalyst that results in a rebranding? Should it be refreshed every 10 years, every 12 years, every 15 years? Or is it more driven off of something in the broader ecosystem that triggers like, oh yeah, now it's probably a time for a rebrand?
It's typically driven by the latter, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You don't want to rock the boat. If your business is sound and everything's going well, there's no need to do it. Most recently, I noticed when Stop and Shop rebranded, they did a kind of a retro. They used to have the stop and go light, the green and red light. Then they did like this little fruit bowl for a number of years. Now they're back to that stop and go green light. And the more you looked into it, you realized that the company itself was losing market share to some of the other grocery chains that had like a lot of prepared foods. So the new CEO comes in. So typically it's like a change of the guard. If a new CEO comes in, oftentimes they want to make a splash, and a rebrand is a great steroid shot to the arm of a business, because it gets you on the radar. You have a reason to send out a press release. But what needs to change when you get that splash is whatever was wrong with the business. If they were trying to get more prepared foods or have a more organized store or some type of new experience, it's like if you do the rebrand and then you get people to come in and it's still the same old, it's not going to work. Like it's not a silver bullet. It has to be part of some larger strategy. It's a great jolt in the arm, and I've only seen it done when absolutely necessary.
Cool. I'm a big believer in sort of the brand promise, like something
Yes.
the brand needs to make a promise and then it needs to keep it, right?
Yes.
And so have you seen situations where sort of the brand promise was made, but then, and you don't have to name names because we don't want to embarrass
Yeah.
anybody, but sort of maybe in an industry category where brand promises sort of tend to get tarnished. I mean, the airline industry at this point, you think about that and how often you get disappointed, right? And it may not be the fault of the airline even, right? I mean, equipment breaks down or whatever happens, but there's certain situations where like, if the brand is too aspirational with regards to the promise that it makes, it's increasingly difficult for the brand to actually fulfill on it.
It is. And that's a great point. And airlines are probably the best example. I don't want to name names like you said, but there's one in particular that their name is supposed to imply that they're super easy. I'm just going to say it's related to the word wind, but we'll leave it there. And so you think you're flying on this airline because it's super easy and convenient, and they fly from small airport to small airport. And so that inherently has a problem in the airline industry, because if you're flying in and out of small airports, you also know if you're a world traveler, by any means, that the smaller the airport, the less flights that are going in and out. So if there's a cancellation or a delay of some sort, you may not be able to get out until the next day. Whereas you fly in and out of a busy airport, you miss one, you catch the next. And this particular airline came out as one of these kind of low frills, easy brands. And we were left high and dry in Florida. We have a home in Florida, and we went down there for the holidays. And first we got a text message that it was delayed. Then it was postponed. And then we got one that we're sorry, we're just not going to be able, you're on your own basically, and here's a refund. And it was the complete opposite experience of their name and their brand. And so, yes, I mean, I think that's real. And it's one of those situations where we may never fly with them again. It would have to be a really, really deal, or we'd have to be really, really desperate. And you don't want to put your consumers in that. It doesn't do much for brand loyalty, put it that way.
Yeah, that's a great example. I remember one of my marketing professors, as we were talking about different ways to describe brands and the brand value.
Yes.
Right. One of his favorite ways of describing a brand is one's willingness to pay more than the commodity as a result of the brand promise. Right.
Yes.
Because, often the ingredients are the same, or
Starbucks is a great example.
The two airports are the same. Right. So it's that, that willingness to pay more is really the brand value, right? Because for whatever reason, you're convinced this one's worth a little bit more.
Yeah, and they say the branding is long term, and the marketing is the short term. The marketing is a new campaign or a new pitch or a special or some kind of promo, whereas the branding itself is meant to keep you as customers for as long as possible. And when you trust the brand, like most people with Starbucks, I think Howard Schultz has a lot to do with it, and that he's very vocal in all the things he cares about and building teams. And so there's always subconscious feeling when you walk in that these employees are treated well, that the company cares about the environment. And so before you know it, you're paying $8 for a cup of hot water, so it's totally a great example of branding. There are plenty of other coffee shops, much cheaper, probably better tasting, but aren't investing as much or don't have the brand positioning that a Starbucks has. And so, yes, people are totally comfortable paying more, maybe for the status of having that cup or feeling that they're part of something. So we're not even talking good that's a coffee taste anymore. It's all these other, like the actual thing that brought you in there is not what matters to you, right? Is that crazy? That's branding.
Yeah, absolutely. We occasionally get involved in startups ourselves as well from a digital marketing perspective. It's not typical that we're involved in the branding. Sometimes we are, but often one of the first things you need to do work with the startup on is make sure that the domain name is available.
Yes.
And my personal opinion is that if at all possible, with rare exceptions, go with the .com.
Absolutely.
Right? You've got all these other top level domain extensions, .ios were sort of hot for a very brief period of time. And
Biz, TV.
Yeah, exactly. So, while I can see the rationale for some of the other ones, I've always sort of felt like, dig deep into that pocket and invest in the .com if at all possible. Do you feel the same way as a branding focused expert?
I do, because I think that's the one consumers are most familiar with, despite all the other ones. I mean, in rare occasions, I think we had a high school that had their domain, lapse, and so it was hijacked. There are people there are bad actors out there. There are people that are just waiting for a domain to expire. They buy it and they hold it for ransom. And this was a STEM high school. I think they owned the .org and that was hijacked and the people wanted, $10,000 or something beyond their budget. So for someone like them, they're not going B2B. They're not reliant so much as just having a place to be vetted. So that I think they went with a .org instead of paying the ransom. So it depends on the brand, how important it is. If it's a consumer good, I think you've got to put that in your marketing budget. If you're a nonprofit or an institution, and you made the mistake of letting your domain expire, we made them an offer. I think we offered maybe $1,500 to try to get the domain back. You make an offer of something reasonable, and if they play hardball, just let it go. It's not that serious for non-consumer brands. Right.
Do you get involved in if it's a startup or it's a potential rebrand or complete repositioning of a brand? Do you get involved in sort of the mission statements and vision statements as well? Because often those intertwine into the look and feel as well.
Yes. I'm actually helping a group of students that are they're grad students, but they're opening up a school in Houston, and I just had a consult with them recently, and we were reviewing their mission statements and vision statements because it actually is the foundation of the brands. It's actually the foundation. And so it's one of those things where reading through the mission statement, you ask yourself, are these the things that I want to be top level? Because you have to remember, your visitor may not go deeper into the about us. They may not go deeper into your personal bios. The vision and mission might be the only thing they read. And research your audience. This particular school was a STEM school, and one of their vision statements stated had diversity in there, and another option had science and technology and engineering and so forth. And I actually recommended that they go with the vision statement that spoke about what is in the curriculum. That's ultimately what everybody cares about. I felt like the diversity piece could be shown through the founders. They were very diverse. They were male, women, Black, Hispanic, white. So just by looking at the founders and through the visuals that they may use on their website, you can communicate diversity. But what matters, I think, to parents the most is, what is my child going to learn there? So absolutely, we get involved and we guide. And I believe that's what many people forget is actually the foundation of your branding.
Cool. Yeah, that's absolutely true. One of the hot topics at the moment is, the generative AI and ChatGTP and its ability to be creative, either with language or increasingly, you're starting to see situations where it looks like it might be able to be creative visually as well.
Yeah, it can be. It's scary. And I love the fact that you brought this up, because I'm of the camp that we have to embrace it. It's here to stay. There are tutorials on TikTok on how you can generate the content in AI and then have it pipe right into Canva and generate graphics right into, your social media feeds, like without any human touch and all this other stuff. And so, I've got staff. My business is set up with full-time employees, and they're looking at each other like, are we going to go the way of the gas pump attendant? It's kind of like, are we being replaced? And the truth is that we need to embrace it as a tool. Very much like the reason why we don't have computers or AI deciding court cases, we have human judges, is because I think there'll always be some gray in anything we do. There are things that AI can do, but it's not always so black and white. And so we should use it as a tool. I'm okay with my copywriters using it as a tool to generate ideas, but then I want you to come to those ideas and maybe combine a few into what's going to work best for our client. I don't agree with some of the folks I've seen that I wrote an entire children's book and illustrated it on AI, and it's on Amazon, and I'm a bestseller, and it only cost me $40, and I didn't put an original thought into this. I don't think that's the future I want to live in, but I do think that we can harness the power of AI and combine it with our own experience, our creative process, and use it as a tool and embrace it. If you think it's going away, I think then you can, the writing's on the wall for you or your business. I do think we need to embrace it.
Yeah, I do see it as a tool as well. And, whether it's ChatGPT or MidJourney or Dall-E, I think part of it is sort of fun to some extent. Yeah. Try to work through its limitations, because then it's still versions 1.0 of a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
Or technically 3.0 on ChatGPT, and 4.0 is coming out later this year. But in the case of ChatGPT, if you ask it a question and it thinks it's a sensitive topic, you could sometimes find a way to rephrase the prompt, right? Yeah. Work around that little, issue.
I do want to add that I count on my colleagues to have integrity through this process, because I'm on social media, and I've seen, I won't name names, but I've seen some colleagues post a ton of AI generated artwork from MidJourney and get all kind of accolades from, unsuspecting, admirers, and no mention that this was created in AI, like, hey, yeah, thanks. I was just sitting around, last night, tooling around, coming up with these designs, and it's like, okay, if you've got to let people know if you're using generated content and claiming it as your own, if you're using that to solicit business or to get more clients. I think it's disingenuous for us as creators or marketers to use this and then sell it as our own. And I'm hoping that colleagues do right as they continue to use these tools.
Yeah, I'm expecting digital watermarks to start to show up. And you can, of course, obfuscate the digital watermarks if you go in and in a MidJourney image, you could probably figure out a way to filter out the digital watermarks. Right. But it is interesting to sort of work your way around. Certainly on the ChatGPT side, for example, I was creating a list of Miami nonprofits, and I wanted their EIN numbers, right? And it said, "Oh, I can't give you their EIN numbers."
Oh,
right?
Wow.
Because that's proprietary information. Now, of course, it's extremely public. It's all over the place.
It's a W-9, yeah.
Yeah. So instead, I just asked for all of their Charity Navigator URLs, because the Charity Navigator URL has the EIN number at the end. Right? So it's sort of like, just. Did
you feel like you feel like you outsmarted the computer?
Totally. Yeah. Totally. Like, that's part of the fun, right? And and asking MidJourney to create stuff where, if you start to come up with some really wacky ideas, and like if you leave out something, MidJourney will come up with a result that you're like, really, seriously, that's what this. And you can waste hours, right, just experimenting with it to sort of see what it comes up with, because to some extent, it's like asking an extremely talented 3-year-old to draw something, right? Because like the talent is there, but then you're like, yeah, but you forgot the eyes,
right? Or it has 5 fingers, or 10 fingers.
Right. Or something. It really has a lot of problem with fingers and hands. There's
It does.
really wacky stuff that comes out of
It does. I fell into that, and I'm an illustrator by education. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Visual Arts, and that's just a gift I have. I love to draw and paint. And when I saw that Lensa app kind of take fire, where everyone was doing these like amazing digital portraits of themselves as an astronaut or a cowboy or anything like that. And I think of myself in college, drawing caricatures with a marker, like, man, like this computer is kicking my butt as far as drawing goes. But we have to embrace it. It's here. We just have to make sure we don't end up like, Terminator and the machines taking over. As long as we're in charge, we can use them for good, and that's how we should keep it.
Yeah, I'm actually just as worried about our brains ending up like the equivalent of Wall-E, except the guys are around with the scooters and fat and getting no exercise.
Drinking like the
getting
shakes.
No exercise, right? Because the brain is no longer asked to do any work.
Exactly. I mean, just our generation, we would sketch things, or have to go to the library and utilize the Dewey Decimal System and find books, and it's like kids don't have to do too much. So we got to make sure that our expectations are higher for them, and not that they become lazier or complacent.
So final question really is just sort of for the upcoming year or two, what has you excited? Like what are you jazzed about with regards to your business or the ecosystem at large?
Yeah, well, I'm excited at the fact that entrepreneurship's at an all-time high, that in any kind of economic downturn, business creation goes up. I'm very, very bullish and optimistic about new business, and new businesses are good clients for us, and they're good for the economy. Small businesses create jobs and so on and so forth. So I'm very optimistic, despite what we've been hearing is this mild, there's a 65% chance of a mild recession. It's kind of like this beige dire warnings, they're like very like mid-level dire warnings. And I'm just going to remain bullish on that. We're excited to have become Salesforce customers recently. It's a big step for us. And I think our goal is to automate more, create more processes. It's just we're in that stage of our development that I think all businesses go through, where a lot of what the principals have in their heads, or a lot of what the founders may have done to create the business, aren't going to sustain the business long term. And so you need to start removing yourself and implementing systems that anybody can pick up on. And so I think it makes your business more valuable. And we're all learning it. Everyone here has a license, and we're just excited again to use computers and AI and some of the automation to help fill in the blanks, to help minimize human error wherever possible.
Great. Well, I think the need for human-based creativity is not going away. So I think you guys are safe for the time being, and that the knowing to ask clients and prospects the right questions, so that the brand vision and the brand mission are actually manifested in the logos and in the general artwork and the corporate designs is critically important. So look forward to watching you guys evolve as you grow the company.
Yes, well, thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in the Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.